Welcome.
How you doing, my brother?
Doing great, my comrade.
It's been a long time coming.
Been a long time coming. I'm gonna give you a very warm introduction so everybody knows what's going on here, who you are, what you do. Um, this is Bradley Heiss. He's it's a lot of things, but what we're mainly gonna talk about today is the work you do, the work you put in, your career, and how it's changing the world, and how people need to know about that. So, yeah, why don't you tell the people what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a clinical exercise physiologist at the Cleveland Clinic, top in the world. But I'm doing something that uh, really hasn't been done before. I organize and run a community gym and dual that with a diabetes and obesity endocrinology program. So, we get people in, we test them on our smart gym equipment, and we set them up with an exercise program that is personalized to each individual. So we take all the guessing out of it. They come in, they put the work in, and they see the results they're supposed to see.
First things first, what motivated you to go into this field out of all the fields you could have chosen to go into? Because you could have chosen a million things.
Uh, it's crazy because I got to be honest. When I was in school, I knew I wanted to do exercise. That was easy, but it was all performance, strength and conditioning, working with athletes. Like my entire 4 years, I was working towards that,
Okay.
specializing in that side of things. And I even started to work my way into that side of the field. I was, interim head strength and conditioning coach at a high school, and then I got this phone call from a close friend telling me, hey, this opportunity is coming up, and be ready because this is one you got to take advantage of. And never in a million years would I think I'm working in the clinical side of things. I never wanted to, be involved in healthcare like that, but it ended up being a perfect pairing that I had no idea about. It's funny how things take you towards what you don't know you're meant to be in.
Definitely. Definitely. So when it comes to athletes, what is your role in an athlete becoming an athlete?
Not only do I look at an athlete from, the performance side of things, but more so from a mental standpoint. I myself was an athlete, not a top performer, but I understand the aspects of the game. I think my IQ in athletics is pretty high, and so I can see things that an athlete that's able to perform at that level might not see, and I can guide them on that aspect of things. So, uh, not only helping them see the game better, but when they do see the game better, being able to execute that at a high level, uh, using their abilities and taking what I see and helping them apply it to their game.
Okay. So you basically, in simpler terms, you help athletes maintain.
Yeah, my number one goal is availability. Like
Hmm.
if I'm ever training, no matter what population I'm working with, if you're not available, you can't do what you're supposed to do. So
Right.
regardless of what your speed is, your strength, your agility, your mental fortitude, if you can't be out there performing, then you're no good. So my number one
Yeah.
goal when I'm training people is to make sure they can be available. So, that incorporates all the different facets of the training, whether that's flexibility, mobility, strength, speed, agility, every facet. Uh, Training those and training the habits correctly so that, when you come to move at high speeds without thinking, that muscle memory applies and you're not, doing things that are going to get you hurt.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. That brings me into my next question. You have a particular expertise and knowledge when it comes to natural movement. And I think a lot of people don't know exactly what that is. So would you care to explain what is natural movement and how that can keep athletes healthy for longer periods of time and help them be available?
Yeah, so when you look at anything move, uh, a natural movement is what they do on instinct, and that can be seen in uh, individuals or groups that are not affected by what we call modern day technology. And when I say modern day technology, that doesn't necessarily mean computers and phones, even though that's a part of it. I'm also talking about the chairs we sit in, the footwear we use on a daily basis, and the way the world enacts nowadays. It's not conductive to what we call a natural movement. So when you look at groups like when you look at an infant when it's first starting to move, when it's crawling around, and even when it starts walking, it's acting off of instinct. It's not acting off of something it was taught.
Right.
As you start to move more, you observe other people and start to experience different things that the rest of the world experiences, and that can create bad habits. Just like any other form. When you're first brought into the world, you're acting off of instinct. You're not, you start to absorb as you get older, but you're acting off of instinct. So not only do you look at infants, but you also look at another group that's not affected by modern day technology, and that's indigenous people, people that
Mm,
don't participate in what we call modern day life. They continue to move off the land. They walk around without footwear. They're not sitting in chairs or desks, with something we call tech neck when your head's dug into your phone or you're hunched over the computer. When you're
yeah.
doing that for hours and hours a day, that over many days, many months, many years, that creates a bad habit and that creates a problem. Your body adjusts to whatever environment it's put in. So
Right.
if you put it in an environment that's not conductive to its natural movements, it's not going to be naturally moving anymore.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it's gonna look like in about 50 years when everyone that was staring at their phone's neck is like scoliosis up, like
Oh yeah.
down there. Like that's gonna be a sight to see.
Yeah, and so how we apply that to the strength and conditioning world is you're starting to see more and more coaches adapt and take an educated and scientific role. But before it was a lot of acting on what you know. Yeah, and that starts with honestly football coaches in America.
Okay.
They are the first probably team of any sport that hits the weight room and incorporates the strength and conditioning side of things at a younger age. And following other sports, well, a lot of coaches when they're training they act on what they know. What you're seeing
Right.
now more and more is high schools are hiring strength and conditioning coaches, movement specialists, where they can afford these things.
Are they
And
conducting a raid at your apartment right now? It sounds
that'd be
wild.
crazy. I just got Twitch rated.
I hope not. I hope they didn't
No,
swat you.
no, they've been going crazy out here in Lakewood, dude. I saw a police chase this morning. Ali saw a police chase 2 weeks ago. I hear
Oh wow.
sirens every other day. Yeah, it's been full on
That's
purge out
that's
here.
that's Cleveland for you. That's what
Yeah.
they. That's yeah. 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 So I could. So like athletes in lesser contact sports, I feel like they are probably the most susceptible to overlook the type of training and conditioning that you would recommend they instill, like maybe like golfers or, you know, swimmers or just any sport that doesn't involve a lot of collision.
Yeah, and funny enough, like those sports, you see those minor injuries that turn into something major because
Right,
in something like football or any other type of contact sport, you have catastrophic events. That's something you can't always control. Sometimes
right,
it's an element on the field. Uh, Sometimes it's another player, like a collision. But in those sports like golf, like you mentioned, or swimming, those individual sports, you control all your movements. So when you kind of line those things up, you can prevent those minor tweaks from becoming something major. A lot of times, what happens is, it's a minor tweak that's caused by something in their game that is muscle memory, and now you have one of two options. You either fight through that and create the risk of causing something worse, or you take a step back from the game and make adjustments to your game so that you can come back stronger and prevent these things from happening down the road that could keep you out longer and potentially derail your career.
Right. I could definitely see that. So for individuals who may not consider themselves an athlete, how can your training and your principles still help them in just having longevity in life, not just on the field? Or
Well, funny enough, what I'm starting to adapt is that it's not a training method, it's a way of life.
okay,
So there's aspects that I encounter when I'm at home, and I follow the same principles. Like, for example, a lot of times I actually will sit on the floor, or I find myself making sure my posture is right. And these are small corrective actions that go a long way when you start to ingrain them into your thinking, when you're present with these things. A lot of people are so focused on another aspect that they're not often thinking about what my posture is, or the way I'm sitting. What is this doing to my body? And that's not their fault. It's not something that everybody is born to think
right,
about. So it's one of those things where if you educate somebody, then they have the knowledge to use it as what they would.
yeah. I'm thinking about just like, can you give an example of some of the not what you could call them bad habits, but habits that the average person does that they may not know is causing chronic deterioration to their
Yeah,
health.
I mean, the number one example, you can go out anywhere, you can walk outside wherever there's people, and I guarantee you'll see more than just one person walking with their feet pointed out. What that is uh, something that causes some serious damage up what we call the the chain or the column of your body. When you think about somebody with their feet pointed out, it's creating their knees to invert, and then what they're really lacking, and a lot of people don't consider, is internal hip rotation. Your
Okay.
hip is a ball and socket joint, just like your rotator cuff, which means it can move in every which direction. When you're walking with your feet turned out, you're taking these steps, and your hip is locked up. And
Mm,
when one of these key joints that is a part of your movement is locked up, it could be your hip, it could be your knee, it could be your ankle, it could be your back. Something When there's an imbalance, something in your column is going to be affected. And it might not happen initially, but down the road you may come to this point where you're really having an issue. And you're like, I haven't been doing anything differently, but you've been doing something differently for so long that it's natural to you.
right.
So that's one key example. Another one is the way people sit. When you just think about when you're sitting in a chair, when you think about sitting on a couch at home, relaxed positions, they're comfortable, but often compromising to what you would consider good movement. A lot of people sit with their hips slided forward in the chair, so you can feel yourself lean back. When you tuck your butt back in the chair and you sit up tall, that's conductive to good movement again. And these are just habits. These are things that you were told as a kid to sit up straight, but you don't know how to sit. Like, who knows really
Yeah.
how to sit up straight? There's more to that than just having your back up tall. Well, really, a lot of things, in my opinion, start from the foot up. So when you think about sitting in a chair, the closest thing to the chair is the hip, which would be, in a sense, your foot when you're sitting. So things when you're sitting start from the hip up. Whatever is closest connected to the ground or that point of contact is going to be what's able to create the most change.
So what can people do, kind of like, what protocol can people take on a daily basis to kind of correct these bad habits?
Well, in my opinion, I think it just starts with education. There's a few people starting to, take on these forms of training, but like I said, the ones that really get it are turning it into a lifestyle. There's some, one of my favorite groups is actually called Primal Movement. Uh, they're, I would say, they're a growing brand themselves. They started out coming from GOTA, GOTA movement, which stands for the greatest of all time athletes have the greatest of all time actions. So they were the first, group of people to really study these movements and start to apply it to a group of people. What I like about Primal Movement is they took it away from this brand with this, we're going to get all these athletes right, and they turned it into a lifestyle. So I urge people to educate themselves. One of the one of the best people to get educated from, his name is Bam Lionheart on YouTube. Very knowledgeable. He has a background and experience in the movement world, and he actively participates in this lifestyle, and he trains others. When you actually educate yourself, then you can start to apply these things. Because frankly, exercise, what I've learned now that I'm more in the industry, is that when you work with somebody, they don't know as much as you think they might know. And honestly, that applies to any industry that you have knowledge of. And I think it's important to be humble in that and remember, even though I do know that somebody else might not, and it's my job to help them and guide them towards a better life if that's what they're seeking.
I second you on that. Education is probably the main thing, because I mean, if you know what you're doing wrong, you're more inclined to change it.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, if you know what you're doing right, you know how to do
Yeah,
it. Because like you asked me, what can people start to do? Well, I think if there's one thing that general people understand is it's stretching. Uh, you can look up on YouTube any form of stretching, but one of the tightest muscles in the body is the hamstring, and when it's tight, you're creating a way for that to not feel so bad. So you're finding these comfortable positions where it rests that muscle. When you actively stretch that and train that, it becomes stronger and more able to handle like the postures that are correct. Because one thing you'll notice is like crisscross applesauce. That that is a great way of sitting. And you look at
okay.
people like indigenous tribes, they still sit in that. When they're in their groups, they'll still sit on the ground like that. It's a great way to sit, and because if you think about it, your hips are back, your your back is up tall, your columns are aligned in a seat. It's one of those ones when your hips are back, it gives them the opportunity to be utilized. When they're sliding up front, just like when you're sitting, when you're walking with duck feet, when your feet are pointed up, they can't be utilized properly, and that's a main cog in the movement. Uh, a lot of people look at humans as one-dimensional, but there's a rotational aspect to us in movement. You look at two of our
Definitely.
main, two of our main joints, our rotator cuff and our hip joint. They are ball and socket joints, and with the ability to rotate when you're moving, they create the optimal type of movement, and your joint is being fully lubricated and fully used in the way it's supposed to.
Okay, so in your field, in your job, on a day-to-day basis, what are you telling your patients that come to your facility? What are you letting them know to do when they go home, that they can, you know, like, not everybody has a habit of being pigeon-toed or having duck feet or being bow-legged, but the people, just as a general consensus, like the people that are trying to improve their motion and improve their natural movement, what are some ways that they can know that what they're doing is natural instead of just something that they picked up along the line? Because, as you said before, a lot of times we get used to these movements and we'll adopt these ways of moving, and sometimes we think, oh, well, this is how I move. This is just how my body was meant to move based on how my skeleton is, or this is just how I've always moved. So how do you kind of get people to shake those habits and to know like, oh, okay, this is probably not a natural way of doing this?
Yeah, funny enough about that, my job I have now is almost like a complete 180 from that way of thinking. And it's not that we're thinking all these bad habits, but the populations I work with are not uh, they're not prioritizing that. They have to first work on getting healthy, and
Okay.
that involves losing some weight or um, building some strength so that they can move better. But I
Hmm.
started to take on with certain people. The most common things I have them work on are two things. One is work on getting your feet straight. If they're pointed out too far or pointed too far in, it's going to create some imbalance. So if you can work on landing straight when you're walking, and it's something we work on the treadmill, and I have them do at home when they go home. But if you can work on landing straight, it's a great start for uh, getting your column from your foot up to your knee, up to your hip, up to your shoulder in line. The other thing is at the gym, strengthen your hamstrings, and at home, stretch them and loosen them. And until you're able to have more control of that muscle, which is such a huge muscle and movement, you're not, you're not going to be able to even have the control or the ability to maintain these functional movements. Uh, and so those are the places I generally start with. But with the population I'm working with at my job, we have to get these people in a healthier position overall.
How important is, or well, it's important, but like what would you say is like the main consistent problem you see with the population you work with? And why do you think that that's the most consistent problem?
Oh, well, actually, not in their own fault. The most consistent, I guess, problem with the population is that they weren't exercising. And there's some clear reasons to that. For those that don't know, I work in an area that is considered an underserved neighborhood. Uh, they don't have access to not just exercise, but healthy foods. They don't have access to outdoor green space, and they don't have access to the education to know what to do. So, right there, our job and our facility provides a place that these people can actually not just become followers, but become leaders in their own lives. Uh, I saw a great quote, and it really made me think about what we're doing. It's you ask somebody to do something, they'll forget it. You tell them to do something, they'll remember it. But you teach them how to do something, and they'll learn it and know how to do it forever. And what we're
Hmm.
doing is we're teaching people how to exercise. Uh, the equipment I work with is from a company called Techno Gym. They have uh, a new line of strength equipment called BioStrength. Each piece of equipment sets up each individual's seat height, their own range of motion, and we take them through a strength test for each individual machine. And then they're able to be guided on programs that are best fit for them and their strength, their range of motion, their height. So each machine is set up conductive to them, and the screens that are on connected to each machine guide the individual so that you can apply this exercise and really learn from it. And what you see is not only are these people starting to exercise, but overall they're more engaged in their health. Uh, the gym was the first start, but now you have people coming and talking to us more about their diet, talking to us about their sleep, and when you make one conscientious effort to change, the others often lead, uh, with one goal in mind of getting healthier. And with this population, to provide them with access to something like this, you know, you see them coming together as a community. I think when you look at these underserved neighborhoods, people often think of, these people, they just want to cheat the system. They just want to skate by on a free pass. But these people were never put in a position to, do something about it. When you have to travel 10 miles to get some fresh food, are you going to use that gas and then spend the extra money on fresh produce that might go bad a couple days from now because you don't know how to cook it? Or are you going to spend $1 on that fast food at the gas station up the street? And, you think about these people, they don't have the money to even think about these choices. They don't have the time because they might be working multiple jobs. They don't have the transportation. So they're often set up in a place where they're not supposed to succeed. And we're, trying to combat that by providing them with a all around place that, can give them all these options. And it's something that you see these people really really appreciative. They're trusting in their healthcare system again. And especially in the underserved neighborhood, there's a correlation with minority populations. The African American community obviously has a distrust in healthcare. There's obvious previous events that have caused that, and this is just one step towards, gaining trust in something that is actually conducive to their health and not just some medication with, words on the label they don't understand or aren't educated to know about. So we're providing them with real life education that they can understand and can apply to themselves and the rest of the others around them.
Yeah, that's a big point of emphasis. I want to emphasize how a lot of communities, just of any denomination, just any community that's considered underserved or in under the poverty line, is a lot of times people don't understand. It's one, these people, when they do have the time to do something to work out, it's a lot of times the way these communities are designed, they're not healthy environments to live in. Like we live in concrete jungles. There's not a lot of green. There's not a lot of places people even feel safe to walk if they were gonna go take a walk or get some fresh air. A lot of people don't even feel safe on the street they live on. So I think having more places like your facility it's really gonna change the course of health. Because I mean, like, I was just thinking about what you said about how a lot of people don't, know how to exercise, and that's what the techno gym and the bio equipment is helping them with. A lot of people are fearful of working out or have a barrier to exercise because they don't even know what to do when they get to the gym. It's just a bunch of equipment in their face and they don't know how to make sets. They don't know how many reps they should do. They don't know what weight they should go to. And then they might overdo it their first day and then they go home sore and they don't want to go back. So it's like, can you
Yeah,
explain
let's talk about
how?
your first day.
Yeah, that was my experience. What was preventing me from working out and going to the gym, it wasn't that I didn't want to be healthy. It was that I didn't know what I was doing. It was just, you just walk in, you see all these weights and you're like, I feel like the big fear is you don't want to waste your time. So when you go in there, a lot of people set aside time from their families to go work out and go to these gyms, and they don't want to walk out feeling like I didn't make any progress. Because I don't know what I'm doing. So can you explain how the techno gym equipment is eradicating that, letting people, it's helping people learn how to exercise without the cost of a trainer?
Yeah, so when I mentioned they come in, they get assessed. And no other gym do you go to for free do you get assessed by an educated professional. Then you get taken on equipment and get tested. So we set up your seat height on each machine, and then every time you log in after that, these machines are AI generated. For those of you that don't know, every time you log in with your smartphone or a potential wristband that's connected to the equipment, It remembers your profile. It sets your seat height up on each machine exactly to the way it was set the first time we did it. Then your range of motion. We set up your range of motion. There's different programs. So for those of you that don't know, like I said, these machines are AI generated. There's no weight on the machine. It's all
Right.
what we call data loaded resistance, which incorporates more than just your traditional weight. It incorporates other functions such as elasticity, viscosity, which is like liquid resistance, uh, other facets, what we call eccentric overload or eccentric reduction, or a setting called no inertia, which is designed to take off the pressure on your joints. So there's a mode for really everybody and whatever their type of training is. And then the machines actually have preset programs based on your goal. Whether you want to tone, whether you want to get stronger, you want to build your muscle mass, you want to increase your power. There's a program that is for every type of, goal you may have. And with me, a lot of the population I work with are trying to lose weight. So we take their testing numbers and I create an exercise prescription, which is another thing you don't necessarily see. You often get a personal trainer who tells you what to do. I I set up what we call an exercise prescription, which is like you're going to the doctor, and you know I work with a doctor who sends people to me as their prescription. He doesn't send them to the pharmacy. So when they come in with me, I don't just tell them you're going to do this machine, this machine, and this machine. I specifically walk them through everything. I guide them. I tell them exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then every time they scan in, their program will pull up for them. And on the screen is a guided pattern based on their goal. That pattern tells them exactly when to, push out or pull in, and exactly how far to based on their range of motion. And what you're seeing is people that can apply this to other types of exercise. People that have learned how to utilize these machines are now interested in engaging in free weights or, uh, aerobic activity that before, because they weren't as confident in a gym, they weren't, concerned with doing these other things. It's a very high attraction for somebody that doesn't know how to exercise because it's literally teaching you as I can explain it to you in words.
Right.
It's showing you, well, I can give you the words that back it up, and then you can apply it, your knowledge, and you don't have to guess when you come in.
Yeah, I want to show everybody an example of what you're talking about. I'm going to pull it up right here so they can
If you
have a
pull up Techno Gym
visual.
BioStrength,
Here we go. Yeah, so can you see my screen?
yeah.
Okay.
If you go on YouTube, there's a video. Yeah, right there, actually.
Yeah, so like this completely revolutionized the way I thought about exercising when I started using this. It was like it's ingenious because it removes that barrier of fear when you go into a gym or an exercise environment because you don't have to think. You just show up and it's tailored to what your strength is based on the testing they did with you prior. It elevates based on a set amount of weeks that you're exercising and strengthening yourself. It's unreal technology, to be honest, and I believe this is probably gonna change the way people exercise if this becomes like a worldwide thing because it's, as you can see, there's no weights. Like there's no intimidating factor. You're not looking at some dude that's like a bodybuilder like The Rock lifting up like 16 plates. Like it's everyone's machine looks the same, and you wouldn't know what weight they're lifting, which gives people another thing that probably deters people from exercising is just the self-esteem factor. Like a lot of people don't want to go in there and you're looking at them and they're just lifting up 25s and then the guy next to you is lifting up 75s. It just discourages you from entering those environments. But this is like it's discreet. It allows you to just go in, do the work. You don't have to think about it. You just scan your little QR code and you're in the game. And that I don't know. That's amazing. Like that's probably it's something I've never seen before anywhere else. And it's definitely something I think a lot of people will appreciate if it was, you know, brought into their community.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I notice at my job is, and when I look around in the gym, I'm seeing a gym full of people that were not exercising. And now they're fully engaged, and not just engaged with the equipment, but engaged with each other. You walk into any gym, any chain gym, the YMCA, Planet Fitness, everybody's in there with their headphones. They're, doing their own thing. When you walk into our gym, everything is facing each other. And there's music playing on a speaker. Most people are engaged with each other. You have people that like to do their own thing, but here people feel comfortable. It's not an overcrowded Planet Fitness with, people, a bunch of people doing things they don't understand. It's uh, more controlled groups of people with, you know, the same goal in mind, and each with an attainable way of reaching it. It's not. It's no longer, coming in and thinking about what I'm going to do today, because you know exactly what you're going to do when you get there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing to me is that just that removal of that that resistance to go to the gym because your mind starts racing, you start thinking about, oh, I gotta write down all my sets, I gotta write down all my reps, I gotta do research on different
Yeah.
exercises. Like it's all there for you already. So it's
And real
it's
quick, if you stay on this page,
mhm.
I know I said when I got to this job, it was like a complete 180 because I was teaching natural movements, which are, a lot of not doing stuff with weights and jacking up your body in ways you're not supposed to. But
Mhm.
if you look at these machines, there were mechanical engineers that designed these that did not come from an exercise background. They worked in combination with people with an exercise background to create a product that, is superior to the rest of the market. You see right here, that first bullet point there says correct posture. Each machine is set up, and each machine, when we take you through, is set up so that your seat height and your posture are exactly how they're supposed to be. Then you see the natural movement. Each machine, whether it's a chest press, the shoulder press, the low row, each machine is designed to be used in its natural movement pattern. A lot of Nautilus equipment, uh, which is your traditional exercise machines, are not designed with that perfect natural movement in mind.
Yeah, one of my favorite features of it is this last point right here is the help for the hardest reps. It may seem like oh well, if you can't lift it, you can't lift it. But to me, that that assistance in those harder reps is what brings you back. Like the biggest thing that just probably discourages people and discourages me when I'm working out is if I tell myself I'm going to do this amount of reps and I'm going through my workout, I'm going through the motions, and I'm on that last set in that last rep, I'm like my arms are like noodle and I'm trying to work it through, and if I can't lift it up, it'll discourage me, and a lot of times I can see how people could take the last moment of their workout and feel like, oh well, I didn't finish the set I was supposed to do. I didn't do as many reps I was supposed to do. So the whole thing is a throwaway, it's a failure. But the way it helps you and guides you through that last reps and just lowers the resistance just a little bit when it feels that you're fatigued, I feel it's going to give you that confidence to where you could come back and say, okay, maybe next time I'll get that. Because every time I was coming back and I felt noodle armed on that last rep or that last exercise, I was like, okay, next time I'll probably have the strength to get through it now because I know exactly. One, I know that the weights are going to fall on my neck and kill me. Two, I know that it's AI assisting me through every rep. So it knows when I'm fatigued. It knows what's the right weight for me. It's not, and the range of motion is already set. So I know that it gives you that extra confidence to where you can go all out because you know, one, you're safe, and two, you have a very, very low chance of sustaining an exercise injury compared to other machines that use actual weights because you know that at the end of the day, if you can't lift it, it's going to assist you through that last rep. And I think
Yeah,
I think is a big confidence booster.
correct. And another thing too that we teach people is, oftentimes when you go into a gym, you may have an idea of how many reps you want to do, and you can do it or you cannot do it. It's totally up to you and what you want to get out of it. With these, the goal is right there in front of you, and in the end of the day, it's just a goal. Just because you don't reach it does not mean you're not doing the right thing. A lot of
Exactly.
times when people don't reach it, it's because they're at a point or a threshold where they're breaking through to get stronger. So if, for example, a simple set of 10 reps, if you're doing 3 sets of 10 reps and you're getting through 2 sets of 10, and on that third set, maybe you get to 6 or 7 or 8 reps, and that's all you got, that is a foundation for breaking through to that next level. That means when you come back and you keep working on it and you get that ninth rep and finally you get that 10th rep, you've done those hardest reps and you've gotten stronger. And you continue to do that until all 3 reps or all 3 sets feel, you know, the same. And that's when you start to increase the weight again. So we're teaching people not just how to exercise, but knowing how to progress. And they're doing it all on their own. I continue to communicate with them and make sure they're okay. But these people that never exercised before are completely knowledgeable and know why they're doing what they're doing and know how to continue to do it. And the goal here
Right.
is to turn them into a term we call an independent exercise. And that is just somebody that is confident and comfortable in the environment and understands not only how to exercise, but how to progress and continue to exercise in a way that's beneficial to them.
Yeah, that's a huge thing too. Just being able to go into the gym and know I don't need a spotter, I don't need a trainer. I can do this after work. I can do this before work. I don't need to look up on my phone a new workout. It really is a way. It's a new direction in
Yeah.
technology that I think that people, especially people in power that have the money and resources to provide communities these things, I think they should take into consideration where we're taking technology because technology over the past 25 years has only hindered us in health and physically and mentally. So I think, I mean, as we get more into the technological age, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't start using technology to make us healthier. I think that should be the main point of technology. I mean, especially with the introduction of artificial intelligence. I mean, that's instead of fearing it or thinking of this dystopian iRobot world, I think we should be considering the other alternative that we could use this technology to make us better and more efficient human beings. And I think your work and your facility is probably the frontier of that.
Yeah, correct. And when you see, like you mentioned, over the last 25 years, technology was not meant to be our healthy friend. Now, in the last 5 to 10 years, you're not only seeing things in my line of work, but you're also seeing things on the recovery side, whether it's a massage gun or uh, infrared uh, blanket. Like there's different things that are starting to help the recovery process. There's things that are starting to help tracking and taking care of your health. You have people that need to check their blood pressure regularly, but before it was a manual pump, you had to make sure you're lining everything up correctly. Now you can stick your arm in a cuff, press a button, and it tells you what your blood pressure is.
Right.
You have people that instead of pricking their finger every day, they can scan a monitor on their arm that will tell them exactly what their blood sugar is. Or they can look on their
Mm,
phone and it tells them in real time whether it's high or low and where it's gone in the past hour. So you have people that are now more not just educated, but more aware of their health and how to, continue to improve that and be cognizant of it. These are things that, 10, 20 years ago, when everything had to be done manually, you had people that were compliant because they wanted to be healthy. And you had a vast majority that things were too busy for them to do these, prick my finger, make sure I'm pumping up a blood pressure cuff correctly, putting a pulse on, checking my pulse and counting to 60 seconds. You can do all these things through an automation now, and it gives you not not only real time feedback where you can keep going on with your day and not have to stop and take 10 minutes out, but that 10 minutes is now 30 seconds or 60 seconds and it's logged, so you don't need to worry about writing it down. And everything is tracked and monitored so that you can look back and see these changes in your health. And it just makes you more aware of where you are and what you can do about it.
Yeah, like one of the first points you made about education and educating yourself. I mean, technology now is probably the best way you can go about giving that to the masses. I mean, if you're gonna implement technology into health and fitness, I mean, what better way than to help people just monitor what their current state of health is? I mean, there's so many people that think they're healthy and that aren't healthy, and then there's a lot of people that know they aren't healthy but don't know why. And I think as we find things like sleep trackers and, like you said, the blood pressure monitor, the blood sugar monitor, I just think especially just on a day-to-day basis, having that awareness of where you stand in your health is going to motivate a lot of people to try to change it and to do something about it. Because me personally, my big thing is sleep. Like my sleep health is terrible. It's
Porous.
awful. It's awful. So when I had an Apple Watch, I mean, it was probably the most aware I was of my sleep. I mean, I would wake up, it would let me know how long I would sleep. It would let me know how much REM sleep I got. It would let me know every time I woke up. And then it would let me know in what hours of the day is the best for me to go to sleep and what my best sleep schedule would be. And I think that all these factors are probably the underlying pillars to the current mental health state of our country. I mean, not like I can only imagine 50 years ago, I hear people say that there wasn't as many people that was depressed. There wasn't as many people with anxiety. There wasn't as much people with all these health ailments mentally and physically. And I think, a big part of that is, I mean, if you're not taking care of A, B, and C, if you're not getting good sleep, you're not eating well, you're not getting sunlight, you're walking funny. I mean, I can only imagine you're not starting off your day on a good note. So I think when I started paying more attention to, I mean, you hear everyone says like you got to get 8 hours of sleep, and everyone's like, yeah, right, like that's not gonna happen. But it's since I put it into practice, trying to keep and maintain a sleep schedule. I mean, it's stupid to think because I mean we're humans. We've slept for as long as we've been on Earth, but it needs to be emphasized more how important sleep and diet and just having a minimal amount of movement and exercise a day can completely change everything. Like people think that if they do a little of this and a little of that, it's not going to make much of a difference. It's going to make the world of a difference.
Yeah, and honestly, to touch off of that, like you mentioned these things we have that help us keep track of our health or, other factors. It's important to remember that these things are estimations. They are continuing to improve and become more accurate estimations, but each of these things should be taken with a grain of salt. In the end of the day, it should make you, what you said, more aware of where you could use some improvement And then you have to take that and apply feeling. It may tell you when you wake up, it may tell you how much you sleep, but ultimately, see how you feel when you go through these processes. And if you apply what they're telling you and it makes you feel better, then yes, keep doing it. And
Right.
people need to use technology as an aid. It shouldn't be all in on technology or all in on non-technology. You should be able to balance these efforts to provide what makes you feel healthy. And what you said there, a minimal amount of exercise, changing slightest things in your diet, they do help because ultimately they lead to bigger change. But you have to start somewhere. People look at all of these changes as a mountain to climb, but ultimately, if you're just thinking about how you're going to climb the mountain, you're never going to climb it. You have to take one step. You have to change one food in your diet, or make a cognizant effort to get to sleep at this time so that you get X amount of hours, or decide at this time I'm going to stand up instead of sitting down for an hour. I'm going to stand up and do something. And that might lead to, okay, I kind of feel good moving. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to start incorporating that. Or I like how this piece of fruit made me feel instead of eating a piece of candy. So I'm going to try and eat more of this. So, those
Definitely.
conscientious changes lead to what is a whole lifestyle change. But you can't look at it as that big picture. You have to, you know, paint one corner at a time. You can't just think about the picture. You have to think about each layer, each piece, each
Hmm.
color of that picture before you decide to move forward and embark on a whole change.
Yeah, that actually brings me to my next point. I know a lot of people look at all the things they have to change in their life and think, oh, well, that they're looking at the end result. They're thinking, I'm so far away from that end result where I want that it may not even be worth the trouble. But to give people some light and some motivation, can you share some success stories of people that have followed this technology and followed your protocol that you've witnessed?
Yeah, so uh, before I proceed, because of my role, obviously I have to, maintain things confidential, but I can say that I've had individuals that uh, in just 3 or 6 months' time have not just lost their weight, but they have improved they have improved uh, their blood glucose levels and their hemoglobin A1C, or they have uh, made cognizant changes in their diet that are giving them more energy. Uh, and what's really cool to see is that every 3 months we try to retest people. So not only do we see changes in their weight, but we see changes in their strength. So you're seeing significant increases in the major muscle groups of the body, whether it's chest press, the low row, the leg press, upper body, lower body, core. You're seeing significant improvements, and I'm talking about a 20% increase in their chest press 1 rep max. Or we also do an estimated VO2 max test, which is basically testing your cardio threshold. So when we do this test, you're seeing people be able to sustain longer, more intense durations on the treadmill, or increase their heart rate to a higher, maximum heart rate without falling out. They're able to sustain these things, and ultimately, what I'm seeing is people able to do things they couldn't do when they first walked in the door. I have people.
Yeah.
I'll give an example of one individual. They would not get on the treadmill, and yeah, you take each person at their own pace. Some people you push. Some people you push verbally. Some people you guide them and push them as they're ready. You can't. Everybody has to be treated at a pace that's meant for them.
Right.
And this individual started on the treadmill, just being able to get it moving and walking. Eventually, we had a time goal of 3 minutes, and then 4 minutes, and then 5 minutes. and then 8 minutes, and then 10 minutes. This individual is now doing 15 minutes on the treadmill 3 days a week. So when you
Phew.
think about where they started with just getting on the treadmill maybe once a week for a couple minutes at a time, they're now doing 45 minutes on the treadmill. And this has completely changed their way of life because things they weren't able to do outside of the gym now don't feel as bad. They're now able to maintain a new way of life that they previously didn't have. Quality of life is the biggest change I've seen in the gym because, ultimately our goal is to help people continue to exercise and, create a sustainable lifestyle change. But you're seeing quality of life, drastically improve. You're seeing individuals that weren't able to walk without an assisted device, whether it's a walker or a cane, that now come in the gym and forget to leave with it or forget to bring
Oh
it in
wow.
or purposely don't bring it in. And so that's the coolest thing to me. And then there's those individuals that see a significant weight loss change because of where they're at. I mean, I have one individual that has almost lost 50 pounds in 8.5 months. And that is, with a combination of diet, exercise, and lifestyle change that's been conductive to them. And these people, like, the important thing to remember with weight loss is we are in an epidemic that most people don't realize where there's these weight loss drugs. It's what they call them, weight loss drugs. They're diabetes medications designed to suppress your appetite. What you're seeing is people chomping at the bit to get these, and they think it's going to be the magic pill to make them lose weight. Well, some people are successful in losing that weight, but in turn, they have completely shattered their metabolism, and while losing all that weight, have not been doing any exercise. They lose all their muscle mass.
Mm.
And what's really important about that is insurance does not cover these medications forever, especially if you're not diabetic. These things these things are short-term changes. And with anything involved with weight loss that is short-term, it's not sustainable. You will gain the weight back and be worse off after. When you come into gym and exercise, you're not only maintaining your muscle mass and your metabolism, but you're maintaining your quality of life. When you get off these medications and you're not doing these things to change lifestyle, you are no longer maintaining your quality of life. And especially as you get older, muscle is the number one thing associated with independence. If I do not have muscles in my legs, I cannot stand. And then I cannot live on my own. If I can't walk
Mhm.
around my
That's it.
house, I can't live on my own. And these are things that are neglected with people that want to lose weight, is they don't want to gain muscle because they think it's negative and they think they're going to be gaining weight. But what's often forgotten is muscle and fat weigh the same. A pound is a pound. But with muscle, you're building your metabolism because muscle requires more energy to be utilized. So in turn, you're building this muscle, which is building your metabolism. So you burn calories all day long to maintain your body. The human body burns calories all day long. So the more muscle mass you gain, the more calories you're burning throughout a day. Where do you think those calories are going when you're using your muscle? They're taking
Right.
away from the fat. And that is one thing that, people that are not incorporating that exercise into a weight loss plan are seeing those negative results with, is they're no longer getting this medication covered and they're at a loss because they did not use that time wisely to change lifestyle habits. And sometimes it's not their fault because they might not have access to a program like ours, but that is just an epidemic that is not being talked about yet because we're at the peak of where the drugs are currently. And you'll see a few years from now this problem arise more because people are not independent, more people need help, and there's not enough people to help them.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Um, just the cycle of, the government prescribing the people these drugs, And then on top of that, the government also allowing poison to be in our food, and people are, and it's sad to think about because people, it's almost like people don't have a choice. Like if you're not making a lot of money, you can only afford to feed your family with what you can feed your family with. It's not like you can have ribeye, steaks, and shrimp every day. I mean, people can only afford what they can afford. And that's where I think technology can make a difference. And, really, I want to ask you this question, but where do you see in a overly optimistic outcome, where do you see people in the next 50 years if we start trending in the other direction of becoming a more health conscious society and a more exercise conscious society where we as a people won't accept, you know, the conditions that we've been placed in. We won't accept the fact that these foods have all these hormones and these pesticides in them, and we actually make an effort to go to farmers markets. We make an effort to grow our own food. We make an effort to change our communities to where they're kinder to us and that we can actually go outside, get sunlight and exercise. Like, where do you see society in 50 years if this goes right? And if this goes wrong, where do you see society?
Well, with the right side of things, I see it going exactly where it's supposed to have been gone since it started. People have always had the tools right in front of them, and nowadays, you know, with how many people there are and the different places that don't have these tools. But people as humans as a race have always had the tools to be successful. They've always been right in front of us and they've been used in the wrong manners to create, to create inequality. And what that does is you have people that are never going to get out of their problem because there's no sustainable model to maintain these things because we're a money driven society. If we get to the point where, like you said, we're growing our own food, we're putting in the exercise, we're doing things for one another, we're being kind, it's going to become something you and me have talked about in a barter society where you offer goods and services in exchange for goods and services. It's no longer going to be a money driven society where you have to have this amount of dollars to be, a participant in this, which is going to help you become you know, a better, healthier individual. You now have a much more equal system because everybody has something they can bring to the table. Now, if you ask me, unfortunately, I think the other side of that is much more likely because, quite frankly, there's a lot of people in those positions that could make the change that are never going to be willing to make that change. And I think what you see is just further and further separation between the top and the bottom. And at some point, the bottom is going to fall out. And it's almost going to, in my opinion, be like different species. You're going to see that bottom start to act more like what we classify another animal as because that is all they are able to do. And you'll see the top start to act like less of a human and more like, in the AI robots. They're going to be more conducive to the futuristic society because they can afford all of these things that 50 years from now are probably going to be exponentially advanced because you look at how much technology has advanced in just 25 years. So I just see a greater divide if things go the wrong way, and those people becoming more simultaneous among AI and robots, and the bottom half of people becoming more simultaneous among animals and other species, and just the way they act.
Yeah, it's a I could see it going both ways.
I'm a hopeful person, so I always would love to see it go that way.
Right.
It's just that when you have people in a position to make the changes that just one reason or another refuse to, it becomes very hard for people that want to make the change that are not in a meaningful place to make it. And with that, I think you just have to start with what's around you and what you're capable of. I know it's funny to say that if everybody can change one person's day, you know, the whole world's day would be made, but that really is true. Uh, If I change your day and you take that and you change somebody else's day, if everybody did their part, the day would be changed. The
Yeah.
problem is there's a lot of people on every end of the spectrum that will not do their part because they physically can't, they refuse not to, they're not in a position to. There's factors on each part of the totem pole where people cannot or refuse not to for one reason or another.
Yeah, it's complicated, but I feel like one thing I've been thinking about as a way it can kind of go in both ways at the same time is like you said before, the barter system. I think a lot of the main problem is that we live in these cities and these metropolises where there's thousands upon sometimes millions of people living in such a condensed area. There's so much land to be had. Like, I mean, I've seen a video on YouTube that said every single person in the world could live in Texas. Like, there's enough land for all 8 billion people to have a house in Texas. But that's not how we separate ourselves. We separate ourselves in these cities, which, I mean, we separated ourselves essentially by resources. We live usually by water or rivers, and we congregate in these large societies. But when you have such a dense population that you're trying to all feed and all use the same resources, I mean, conflict is natural. So I think if we spread ourselves out and go back to a more, not tribal, but just a more, like if every city had like 15,000 people max, and we just spread ourselves like a polka dot around the country, I think there would be less fight for resources. I think there would be less friction when it comes to feeding everyone. I think people will become more self-reliant. I think health will probably see go in an upward trend. Um, but the fact that we live in these gigantic crab buckets of people, I mean, it's we're kind of working against ourselves in terms of trying to get to a healthier society. Because I mean, we live in these places where, I mean, everyone's fighting for resources, everyone's fighting for a job, everyone's fighting for their house, everyone's fighting for a spot. But we have so much room on this planet to spread out. I think people are it's not that's not a very profitable way to live. I mean, in terms of capitalism. But if we went back to a barter system, I mean, we can enjoy all the same things we enjoy today if we were trading goods and services for goods and services. I just think people need to open their minds to a new way of living. We're so comfortable in the way we live now. I think we're so scared of change because we don't want to lose what we have. But one thing I learned in a quote I've been reciting to myself is the best way to keep something is to give it away. And if we want to keep the human race and if we want to keep this thing going for as long as possible, the only way is to give. I mean, everyone can't take and expect there to be progress. I mean, if we all give, we all have. So,
Yeah. And it's funny to say that right around Christmas time because you think about, especially as a kid, like each kid always wants that that gift or that thing that they really really want, and you think about that feeling you have there. than you take a feeling you might have now when you give something away. And it feels so great, whether it's an actual object, knowledge, whenever you're able to give to somebody, to see them utilize what you're giving them is just, it's honestly the best feeling in the world. And it's not something that, is present in your mind when you think about wanting something yourself. And, as humans, we're wired to have desire. And, I think if more people could feel what it feels like to give and understand, like, you know, how good it feels in comparison to receiving, it, it would really change the way people look at things. But a lot of people, quite frankly, haven't had the experience yet to feel what it gives on a level of not expecting reciprocation. A lot of people give, but they give with the intention that they want something in return. If you just give without expecting, the that's the best gift I think you can receive is the reaction from that. So I don't think a lot of people put that into perspective, but it really it honestly feels amazing when you give something and you see the reaction. That's the best gift I think I can receive.
Definitely. I mean, it took me to my adulthood to realize that. I mean, I don't think I gave anyone a gift till I was an adult. Like I pretty much received for 20 years, and it's nice to receive, but you don't. I mean, it's almost like when you receive something. I mean, it's nice when it happens, but then you quickly forget. Like that feeling goes away very fast. But when you give, it's like that'll fulfill you for weeks. Like it makes you want to give again, so you can have that
Yeah,
feeling
and
again.
I mean, the perfect example for me is with my job. What I give to these people, and I say that humbly. I don't say it like I'm giving them their life, but the knowledge I give them and the effort I give them, I wake up every day and I want to give that same effort because I see the change and I see how it makes them feel. So, if people could feel what I feel when these people change their lives, I think they'd be more inclined to give as well. It's just, unfortunately, not everybody has had that experience yet, and I wake up craving that now because of what I've experienced because of it.
Yeah, I mean that's why I started this podcast. I mean, I didn't start this to receive anything, to be honest. I honestly started it because I feel like I feel like I'm just like selfish with all the information I receive. Like I literally research stuff and learn new things every day. And I'll think like, man, this is so fascinating. But the most fascinating thing about everything I learn is that like I can give this information to somebody else, even if I can't use this information. Somebody can use this information, whether or not I take it or not. If I have the ability to distribute it to people, I mean, my main goal is for somebody to listen to my podcast and that be their sign to make the shift, or that be that sign that even if they hear a clip of it or 5 minutes of it, like if it's the 5 minutes they needed to hear to do something differently that will lead them to a better outcome, I mean, that's literally the goal. So this is all these examples you gave are like perfect nuggets for people to take and to make that
Yeah,
change.
I think something that we take for granted here in America and, just in a modern society is that we have the ability to give this information. There's places on earth that you can't receive information because it's illegal. You can't read books because they're illegal. And you're starting to see that here in America too, with some books that are not allowed in school, or uh, people that have certain viewpoints that will not get a public platform. And it's unfortunate, but that's why I think the people that do have the ability to give in that aspect, it's almost their duty to do so, because it's a disservice to not only yourself but those around you that could benefit from
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've since in the last 3 months, I probably read more books than I've read in the last 20 years. So, I mean, because I just came to a realization that information is not just information. Like, it's it's a privilege. It's a honest privilege to be able to open a book, or to, for me living in America, for me to be able to type into Google any book about anything that I want to learn about, and learn about it. And it sounds crazy to say, but the majority of people on this globe we live on can't do that. And it may seem so small because it's like we've been privileged our whole life. We've lived in America, but like there's a large population of people that cannot, or just do not have the ability to gain information. So I think platforms like podcasts and film and all different types of media, I mean, it's our duty to disseminate information, whether people agree with it or not. I mean, it's our duty to share the knowledge we have. I mean, because we have the privilege of receiving it. I mean, and people that receive this information, I mean, it's almost like a cheat code. It's like if you live in a country where it's illegal to have this information, but you can listen to a podcast. I mean, that podcast is probably podcasts to us are just like things we listen to, but to them, it's probably like this is like a cheat code to them. This is like, oh, I'm receiving information I'm not supposed to have. I'm receiving information I was never supposed to hear. And now I can go into my communities and educate my people. And then now we're getting closer and closer and closer to the ideal world, I think, that most people will want to live in, where we're in a global society where there's not people that are starving in terms of information. We all are knowledgeable, because the main thing, the reason I think there is an upper class and a lower class is education. I mean, colleges were not meant for poor people when they were made. They weren't constructed for that. They were constructed for the elite to share information with each other, and not only share that information, to keep it for themselves. So now we live in a world where, as long as you got a phone, which majority of people do, even in third world countries, they have cell phones. So if you have an internet connection, you can change your life. And I think that's the most powerful thing that this generation of humans could probably do, is make education free of charge and global, which has never been.
it. And it's funny you say that, because in my current job, I never have realized that more than now, how powerful that knowledge is and what you can provide to people, and how you can do it on a global scale. Because with what's called the Techno Gym ecosystem, you can travel to another place in the world with the equipment we have at our gym, pull it up, and utilize it there. And with that, you can educate somebody there on how to use it as well. So, so you now have a place where the knowledge is available and it can be spread on a global scale, because this company is based out of Italy, and they're very prevalent over in Europe, and they're starting to make more splashes here in America. I mean, you have this company used by the Chicago Bulls. You have this company. Yeah, we had uh, people from the Cavs that are looking at this equipment. So it's starting to be incorporated on those scales. It's used at the Olympics. It's used in these places that are global. And we now have the ability with the people I work with, where they can take it and apply it on a global scale. So it's just funny how these things come back around, and these points we're talking about, and we're starting to live that in real time.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon. Like, to be honest, I mean, the way I see things going, hopefully I mean, to me, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get rid of capitalism. It's been so much of a vital part of the way this country operates on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, the way I see it is the world isn't black and white. I mean, there's nuance to everything. And I think if people take close into consideration the nuances of, I mean, education you don't have to make money from educating people. I don't think education should be a profitable business. I think if the more people are educated, the more money will be made at the end of the day. I mean, and the more healthy people are, the more money will be at the end of the day. I mean, at the end of the day, 99% of people work. The healthier you are, the longer you can work. It's that simple. No matter what job you're in. The healthier you are, the longer you can work, the longer you can make money. And I think we're kind of working against ourselves. We live in a society where work is like everything. Money is everything. But health is not a priority. So you have people that are homeless in their 60s and 70s because they can't work. You have people that rely on 14 and 15-year-olds to drop out of school to go to work because the elders of the family aren't able-bodied. So I just think, I mean, health is only a plus. I mean, it helps capitalism to me, if anything, because
health
I
is
mean,
wealth.
health is wealth. Health is wealth, and it's sad to see that America has reached the point it has reached, but hopefully it reached this point so we could wake up and realize, okay, we're heading in the wrong direction. So I think we're closer to realizing that, and hopefully another thing is I just hope more media outlets and more podcasts arrive that can be more of less entertainment and more education. Because I mean, we have a million movies to watch to entertain us. We have a million songs we can listen to entertain us. I think we're good on entertainment. I mean, I don't think we need any more drama or entertainment or newsletters. Like, I just think we're at a point where we need to really value learning, and learning can be fun. I think a lot of people don't understand how fun learning can be if implemented in the correct way. Like, for example, Duolingo. I was watching a TED Talk about the creator of Duolingo, and he said he originally wanted to make a math app. He's a major in computer science, has a PhD, a doctorate in computer science, and he's from Guatemala, one of the poorest countries in Latin America. He said his mom spent her entire life savings, all the income she's ever earned, to send him to America so he could go to school for computer science. He goes to school for computer science, graduates, and he basically wants he wants to reciprocate the love. He wants to take that what his mom provided for him, and he wants to provide that for the world. He wants to provide free and ease of use education. So he said, okay, what's a way I can do that in the 21st century? So he decided, well, what do most people want to learn? What's the thing that the majority of people on earth want to learn? Because it's not math, and it's definitely not computer science. But he said majority of the people on planet Earth want to learn a foreign language. Biggest thing is there's 3 billion people right now that want to learn English. Not only do they want to learn English, English will enable them to make more money. A lot of people have barriers to working certain jobs based on them not being able to speak English. If you're able to speak English, you can work at a restaurant, you can work at a hotel, you can work customer service. If you only speak your native language, you're kind of limited to your area. So he figured, I'm going to make a program to teach people language, but there's already thousands of those. Difference is, he realized not only is there 3 billion people that want to learn English, there's 8 billion people that want to scroll on their phone all day. So he said, I'm probably going to have to compete with Instagram and TikTok and all these other platforms to gain people's attention. So he designed an app that used the same principles of addiction that Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter uses to keep people's attention. He used those same principles in making Duolingo. So now, not only is he making learning fun, incremental, no pressure, it's enabling people to change their entire life. And to be honest, in a way where I feel like it should be implemented in different areas other than language. I mean, I'm learning Japanese right now, and I would be devastated if I stopped my streak. Like, I'm on a 25-day streak, and it's like, that streak is what keeps you
crazy.
It keeps you going back, though. That streak is like, it's the same thing Snapchat used when Snapchat first came out. You didn't want to break your streak with anybody, so you kept coming back to Snapchat. Even if you were sending a smiley face to somebody, you just kept coming back to the app. And they know once they get you in the app, you're in the app. You're going to be scrolling for minutes or hours. So they would use that streak to keep you coming back. It's the same thing with Duolingo. That streak is what keeps you coming back. But you feel, the thing is, the end result's different. When you scroll on Snapchat for 5 hours or Instagram for 5 hours, you walk away with nothing other than wasted time. And then you just feel this void, like, I just wasted 5 hours of my life and I walked away with nothing. With Duolingo, every minute you spend on it, you get this feeling like I'm doing something. Not only am I doing something, I'm learning something I probably wouldn't have had access to learn for free. I would have had to pay someone to teach me this, or I would have to go to college to take this course, or I would have had to sit down and discipline myself to crack open a foreign language book and teach myself this foreign language, which a lot of people don't have the concentration to do. So you have this app that's reinforcing learning in the funnest way possible, and you can spend 5 minutes on it every day. Everyone's got 5 minutes. You can spend 5 minutes on it every day, and you're coming away with something, even if it's 2 words that you learn. Now you know 2 new words in another language. You spend 5 minutes. I just think that concept of globalized education that's free should be not only taken to language, it should be taken to fitness, it should be taken into mathematics, anything anybody wants to learn. I think we should start creating apps and programs to make it fun, or make it the cool thing to do. Yeah, engaging, the cool thing to do, not just scrolling and looking at Instagram models all day, because at the end of the day, that gets nobody anywhere.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is, because with the app associated with our gym equipment, it tells you, it has a leaderboard and it tells you who's burning more calories. And if I see you burning more calories than me, I'm getting in there, and I'm not leaving until I'm ahead of you.
Definitely.
And so
definitely,
it's another way to keep people engaged and keep people wanting to continue to better themselves in that aspect. So I think that's another important factor, is not just finding a way to stay engaged, but finding a way to keep you wanting more. And there's a healthy way to want more.
Yeah.
When you're wanting more knowledge, you're wanting more fitness gain, you're wanting more sleep. There's healthy wants when you want more. It's just making sure you're finding the healthy wants instead of wanting more of, addicting factors.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
so I think that's a big point you hinted at there, is taking those, taking those addicting factors of social media or other apps and applying it to something that can actually be useful to you. So I think if that's another way you combat what is considered the negative perception of technology, is using what is negatively perceived and turning it into something that can be used positively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially when it comes to AI, I think everyone's got their fears and their preconceived notions about where technology is going to go in terms of AI and robotics. But I mean, I think a lot of things that people don't take into consideration is as inevitable as AI is in the growth of artificial intelligence and robot intelligence, it's going to happen. It's happening now. But a lot of people forget the fact that we get to control the direction. We get to control where it takes us. We get to control the outcome, no matter if it's here or not. Like, eventually, cellular communication was going to happen. We were going to have cell phones. We were going to have radio. We were going to have all these new ways of communicating. I remember I read in a book that when trains were first made, people were terrified of them. People were like, people would not go on trains because people make up all types of stuff. They were saying if the train goes over 35 miles per hour, we're all gonna melt. If like they made up all types of myths as to why they shouldn't go on a train. Now we have trains that go 200 miles per hour. It's when there's always going to be fear with the introduction of technology. When the internet came out, people were like, thought the world was going to end in 2000. I mean, but like we've always done, we've altered the course of where it's going to take us. We made trains. People were scared. Now we can travel anywhere we want in the world by train. We came out with phones. Now everyone's got a phone, and now we're to the point where the phone is like another organ. Like, we can't live without our phone. We can alter the course of where we're taking all AI and art and robotics, and we can tailor it to suit us in a positive way. I think that's the whole point of technology. Is not only does technology make things easier and more convenient, but it can make us more human. It can make us better human beings. It can make us be healthier. It can make us smarter. It can help us be kinder to one another. It could eventually probably end conflict and end war if we use it right. But as you can see, we've used it as the opposite. We use technology for war. We use technology for conflict. But I mean, as human beings, we have to take more responsibility for the direction of where these technologies go. Because at the end of the day, we're making them. We're the ones putting it together. We're the ones deciding what sector of life are we going to put these technologies in. So I think we got to take more responsibility for where this is all going. And I think in terms of health and fitness, I mean, it's looking good, but we got to get the education part down first before we get to all the gizmos and gadgets. We got to get the education down so people know what a healthy lifestyle looks and feels like, because there's a lot of opinions about that, about what a healthy lifestyle looks like and what a healthy lifestyle feels like. I mean, so I think and it's different for everybody, but I mean, we've got to have some standards as to what the human condition should be in terms of what a healthy human being is.
Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest challenge that we've had so far is there's always been one standard for everybody. And the downside to that is there are chronic conditions, there are social conditions that are out of people's control that put them in a health landscape that is outside of what is considered that one singular health pillar.
Right.
And we need to look at it as like finding a balance that works for you.
Right.
Everybody is not going to be able to apply the same healthy outcomes to each other. You have to be able to give and receive, like we talked about. I give out plenty of knowledge based on my experiences, but I have people that ask me about things related to physical therapy or things related to rehab that I don't know about, and I'm not going to provide them with information that's not going to be conducted to them. I'm going to tell them, listen, this is not my area of expertise. I recommend you go speak with somebody I know that is more knowledgeable about this aspect. And I think if more people are willing to be honest with themselves about what they know and what they don't know, you'll be able to provide people a much more clear picture. I don't want to guide somebody incorrectly, pretending to know something I don't. And on the
Right.
other end of that, I always keep an open mind and I'm willing to learn. I think if people that consider themselves experts or consider themselves novices on every end of the spectrum are willing to learn, then we as a society will continue to become more knowledgeable and be able to pass that knowledge on to each other in a better way. Because it also takes into account how you present that information, and everybody takes it in a different way. So finding out how to interact with different populations, different individuals that are at different levels, it takes a special skill set. But if everybody's a willing learner, you can certainly get it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, you gotta want to learn, and you, the quote I go by, I mean, it's a biblical quote, but I mean, I think it applies to anybody. It can, whether you believe in God or not. I mean, it says, the wise man, or a man who thinks he's wise, is a fool, and a fool, something like that. Wait, a wise man knows he's a fool, and a man who knows he's a fool is wise. So, I mean, knowing that you know nothing will make you smarter in the long run. Thinking you know things already and assuming you know things will make you a fool in the long run. I mean, you gotta want to learn. Not only do you gotta want to learn, you gotta know that you gotta be comfortable with other people, whether you look like them or not, or come from the same area as them, or come from the same economic background as them. You have to understand that there's millions upon billions of people that have knowledge that can help you, and you have to be willing to listen, even if you don't agree with everything they say. You have to be willing to listen to things you don't agree with. You have to build up a tolerance to listen to people you don't like. You have to build up a tolerance because they're all learning experiences, whether you agree with it or not. And I had to learn that. Just, you can't listen to a bunch of people that agree with you. You can't listen to a bunch of people that have the same ideas as you, because you're going to create a bubble around yourself of just you reinforcing what you already believe in. And you're just reinforcing what you already think you know. But when you listen to people that you don't agree with, and you listen to people that may have radically different opinions than you, at the end of the day, if you take the time to listen to these people, whether you think what they're saying is BS or not, you come away learning. So a difference in opinion or a different view of life shouldn't be met with like hostility or conflict. And I think that's where a lot of today's society, especially in generations of our age and younger, are headed in the wrong direction. I feel like we live in these bubbles of like opinion. Like we have to agree. If you don't agree with me, you're my enemy. If you're not a Democrat, I can't listen to anything you have to say. If you're not a Republican, I won't listen to anything you have to say. If you are a Jew, I won't listen to you. If you're an atheist, I won't listen to you. Like, we put ourselves in these little huts and groups, and if you're not in this group, nothing you say matters. And that's not going to lead us anywhere as a human race. I mean, just because you believe in a different God than me, or don't believe in a God, doesn't mean you have good information about how I should exercise. Doesn't mean you might not have good information about what I should be eating. Just because he's black and he's Indian or he's Chinese doesn't mean he might not have the cure to a disease that I have. I mean, we're all human, so we all got to listen to each other at the end of the day. I mean, even if it's a person you would call a bigot or a racist or whatever label you would give somebody, I mean, we all got to listen to each other at the end of the day. And I think having more, having smaller societies and smaller groups of people living together, I think that's probably the best way to go about that. Because as long as we live in these big metropolises. It's too much like neck and neck, like fighting for resources. And I just recently was in a small town, and it's a whole different vibe when you're in a small town versus a metropolis or a big city. When you're in these small towns, everyone's helping everybody. Everyone's, no matter what you look like, it's a unit. It's a community. I know everyone's face. I know everyone's family. So, and I see them on a day-to-day basis. So I'm more inclined to help them out. I'm more inclined to think about them in the decisions I make. I'm more inclined to think about the well-being of the whole group if I'm familiar with the whole group. But live in a city with 5 million people, there's no way I would know everybody. So I'm forced to inherently just think about myself. I'm just doing what I can do to stay afloat because I mean, this is new. I mean, this is the only world we've known, but it's relatively new. I mean, 100 years ago, there wasn't a city with 10 million people in it. There was no cities with. I mean, New York had its first million people 100 years ago. So, if I mean, majority of the humans on Earth, we've lived in small communities of a couple thousand people, and even smaller than that, like a couple hundred people. So, I think I don't know if we can find a way to build a society where we're all trying to help each other out and we're all think of each other as one, then a lot of the problems that me and you are trying to fix will probably solve themselves.
Yeah, it's just, it just takes each person to be willing. And with that, it also takes each person willing to be humble and understand that no matter, what level they're at, there is always somebody willing to take it to another level. And my biggest thing with being a willing learner is it's not just learning from what somebody else is saying, it's learning from what they do, it's learning from what they don't do. They're, being an observer, being a listener, you know, it's funny because people say think before you speak. I think it should be look and listen before you speak. You're going to take in much more information from the outside than you are only using what's inside of you. As soon as I look at something, my brain is just taking in 5 new thoughts based on one object, and I can take all those and apply them in a different way. They can be positive, they can be negative, they can be neutral. You have to, you have to be willing to take in experience, and that experience can come from all different facets. It can come from a medium, from something you're watching or listening to, or it can just come from feeling. When I walk outside, what does it feel like? And how is this conductive to what I'm going to do today? Like, every single experience should be taken with an understanding that the present experience is not all it has to offer. And I think, often people take that for granted, is that what you experience right now might not have any impact on you until next year. And you could say that right now at the end of the year, or you could have said that back in January. And there's things that I experienced 2 years ago that set me up for what I'm doing right now. And as long as you're willing to take in those experiences, they don't need to all be applied right away and acted on. They can be stored. We have an incredible thing with what our brains are capable of. And, often people don't use it to its full capability. So I think being willing to take in these experiences is the start of that. And then you learn, where to sort things. You learn how to apply these experiences. Overall, it makes you, better fit to handle different measures, different types of encounters, and it makes you more ready for challenges. It makes you more ready for things that you are afraid to encounter. So I just think being willing is one of the biggest keys as a human, uh, because ultimately, if you're not willing to do something, you are never going to you're never going to embark on that journey.
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way. You already
Damn
know.
straight.
One of the last questions I had, yeah, actually was meant to ask it way earlier, but um, can you inform people on the importance of walking barefoot?
Man, what a great question. You know me, man. I am a strong advocator for what our foot does for the rest of our body. Now, from a chemical standpoint, there are benefits to being barefoot on, uh, mineral surfaces. When we're talking about grounding, your body has electrical currents. So does other living things such as grass and such as the earth. So when you're able to connect with another living object or organism, you're going to seek some benefits from that. Now, I'd be lying if I tried to tell you everything about those benefits. It's something I need to research a little bit more. But what I can speak on is the physical benefits of walking barefoot and how that's conducted to the rest of your body. When we were talking about natural movements, and we didn't really get into like the gait pattern, but everything starts at the foot and ankle complex and works its way up. When you're walking barefoot, you have thousands of nerve endings on the bottom of your foot. Now, because these nerve endings are so small, it's not something noticeable to the naked eye, but that feeling when you walk barefoot, your foot is able to take in what it's feeling and apply that. It's able to strengthen the muscles of your foot and in turn make you much more functional as a mover. When one of the biggest things that I think plagues our society now is uh, the combination of fashion and footwear. And I think there's a way to combine fashion and footwear with sustainability and functionality. Uh, when you wear footwear that has these extra padded cushions, this arch support, you're taking away from your foot and its ability to function as a part of your body. You're basically walking around with a crutch on your foot, or you're walking around with a cast on your foot, and it's not able to feel anything it's interacting with. It's not able to adapt to these uh, different textures, these different environments. When you walk, it's not always a flat surface. So to have a shoe that's always a flat surface is not conducive to the way the earth is, because quite frankly, the earth is not flat. Now, when your foot strengthens over time, it builds the arch, which is conductive to the ankle, which builds up to the knee, which builds up to the hip. So when we talk about those columns, everything starts at the foot. When you have a collapsed arch, everything else is collapsing. Your ankle is collapsing inward, your knee is collapsing inward, and your hip is not rotating properly because you're compensating for other factors that aren't working. So if there's one thing I can advocate for, it is try to get some more barefoot activity. Now, a lot of people, I'm not going to tell you to jump right into it. There's, measures you need to take. Uh, there's certain footwear that is called zero drop, or, a wide toe box that might not necessarily be considered a barefoot shoe, where the sole is very minimal. And that's a way to ease yourself into what we would call a minimalist or barefoot shoe. Um, the other side of that is, quite frankly, when your foot, if you imagine it's going from not getting any work to every step you take, getting all those nerve endings and all that muscular, tissue being used, it's going to be pretty sore. And, feelings of plantar fasciitis or other ailments that cause people not to be able to walk can start to creep in. But that's why you have to build up, and you can't just jump right into it. It's not something I recommend, like running a marathon in a barefoot shoe. It's something that requires training, just like any other muscle of the body. But as far as walking barefoot, I think it's something everybody needs to do and needs to get more of, because as we use the footwear we use today, it is not conducive to how our foot is supposed to be as a structure of our body.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. When you were telling me that, the analogy I could think of is like, so people could better understand what like a normal shoe like a Jordan or like a Timberland boot or something is doing to their body. Like the analogy I was thinking of is like when astronauts go into space for long periods of time. Usually astronauts work out when they're in space. When they're in the space station, they're on treadmills, constantly working on their body, constantly making sure that their bones and their muscles don't atrophy. Because if you just go into space and you're in zero gravity for months and months on time, you're never using your muscles. You're not, your body is facing no resistance. Your body needs resistance to stay resilient. I mean, so in the early space travels, they would go into space for months on end, and then they would come back to Earth, and they would be like old men by the time they came back, because their muscles atrophy so much from the lack of resistance and the lack. You've been floating for months, so it's like it's the same way with your feet. I mean, if you're walking on a cloud every day, not only are you putting stress on your other, I can see how your whole body's gonna have to overcompensate, but your feet are never like putting in any work. I mean, they're just chilling on the couch all day, and then especially if you try to go from that to going barefoot, I mean, it's like telling a dude that's been sitting on the couch all year to run a marathon. So
Yeah, and this is the best example I can provide. Is you look at the top shoe here. Look at what it does to your foot. It's completely taking it out of alignment, and you can imagine it's like a house. It's like any structure. When the foundation is not built correctly, the rest of the structure is not going to sustain itself.
right,
Another example of that. So that's the part about the cushion. That's the part about why that zero drop, that that connection there is important. Look at this structure right here. This is a natural foot. That's the way a foot is supposed to be able to breathe. These are what that's an example of what a van looks like on the bottom, a van's shoe.
mm.
And so these structures are, it's creating an imbalance at the foundation of our body in its movement state. And that's what tends to throw off all these other structures. That's
I think we have lost the B man. Um, hopefully he reconnects. I don't know if his laptop died. I'm probably gonna edit this out. Um, here he is. He's back. He's back in black. All
technical
right.
difficulties. You can see I'm a master of the body and not the technology. I clicked leave instead of end my share. Oh my
Oh
god.
man, gotta love it.
It's all
Got to
good.
love
We're
it.
still here.
Still in action.
I sank there for a second. You feel me? Don't sink.
Don't sink. Don't fall into the hole, man. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. You completely educated me on that when you introduced me to walking barefoot and that whole thing, because I had no idea people's feet were even supposed to look like that. I thought I was walking normal, my feet looking like this. I thought that's how it was supposed to be, but it only makes sense now that, I mean, we're primates. I mean, I don't think our toes are supposed to be cuddled up with each other.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is like the flexibility of the foot. When you wear it, like I have, obviously I have shoes in the house, like not handy, but if you take a Nike or you take any modern shoe, you cannot Like it does not bend. You have to literally force it to bend. If you take a minimalist shoe like a Vivo Barefoot or a Zero, which are a couple of the brands, it's flexible to whatever surface you mold it to. And when your foot is inside that shoe, it's also able to be flexible to that surface. So not only are you able to walk barefoot, like, when you specifically set time aside for that, but as you gradually work your way up, you're able to utilize a shoe that can function in the same way as you would as if you were barefoot. So when you go on a hike and you're uh, on these surfaces that are not just a flat sidewalk, or you know like any of these surfaces that are not just conducted to a sidewalk or a flat surface in a grocery store, you're getting that proper flexibility, that proper function out of your foot, and the what it does to your balance is incredible. You have so much more proprioception, and your ability to feel what you're stepping on. Uh, it's done a world's difference for me, and now my entire footwear selection is almost barefoot. Something I've taken time to work up to, but almost every day I'm wearing a barefoot shoe, and the difference it makes is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I've I'm born pretty much wear all type of shoes, but I've always leaned towards a sandal. I've pretty much
Oh
been a
yeah,
sandal guy my whole life. And I never knew why. And I think it's just because I wanted that room. Like I want that room to spread my toes out and not be in put my feet in a closet.
yeah,
But other than that, I mean, just to emphasize like that feet to ground, heel toe pattern of walking. I mean, that's probably, I mean, I see a lot of people that don't know how to walk. I mean, it's like people walking like toe to heel, people walking like slamming their feet against the ground. And my mom always talks about like how I'm always sneaking around. Like she thinks I'm always sneaking around because she never hears me walk. So like she'll turn around and be like, when did you get here? And I'll be like, I just walk. Like I don't make noise when I walk because I just walk like, you know, I walk in. It's like a wave. Like my feet go down like in waves. They don't just come down like a flat thing. I think that's probably gonna walking heel toe closer to the ground. It's gonna realign everything.
yeah. And this is one more example of kind of to draw us back into what we were talking about previously with natural movements. When you walk with the outside of when you walk with your feet pointed out, all of this that you don't see highlighted is where the pressure is being applied, which is the arch of your foot. If you think about your foot structure, if you stepped in a puddle barefoot and then you stepped on cement, when you have an arch, this figure forms. This whole
Mm.
outside, this all forms. So the green is where most of the landing should be absorbed. The yellow is the kickstand. It's the point that helps you balance your big toe. And then the red is where ideally the pressure should not, like that's your backup. Like, but if your pressure is landing here, that's not only leading to issues like plantar fasciitis, but that's leading to issues with your ankles caving in and causing weakness there. That's issues with knee pain because things are out of line underneath that. So everything starts at the foot, and specifically the bottom of the foot. And when you're able to properly utilize that, it it creates a more conductive way of movement for you. And frankly, you'll feel better when you move. You'll be more able to do the things you want to do, especially when you're talking about people in activity. So not just athletics, but other things like hiking, anything active that you want to do.
And to leave people off, I wanted to give an example, or you give an example of something a lot of people struggle with right now in America due to a lot of factors, but back pain. Do you How would you recommend people sleep?
Wow, that's a great question. For starters, I think people should sleep in any way that gets them to sleep. If you can't sleep, your body is going to break down. At least when you're in sleep, and like specifically what we talked about, the REM sleep cycle, getting those a lot of recommended hours. When you get that, your body has an opportunity to recover and repair itself. The
Right.
metabolic changes that happen internally and lead to those physical changes are imperative when you get that sleep. It creates that recovery phase, and it's something huge in the athletic world with getting that rest. Um, the most correct way to sleep would be on the left side, sleeping on your left side. As far as back pain goes, and I was speaking about Bam Lionheart. There is a video on YouTube, on his YouTube, if you look up um, sleeping, in a healthy way. Um, it's something that I would say I haven't put a ton of research into, but my biggest recommendation would be whatever method actually puts you to sleep, because if you can't sleep, you're not going to get that benefit. And
Definitely.
the other part of that with the back pain is the education. If you are not educated on how to properly utilize your back, if you're lifting with your back, that is going to create a big problem for you. But if you understand how to utilize your body as a whole and not in pieces and parts, start, utilizing your legs when you lift, utilizing proper posture as you stand up. These things lead to uh, less of those tweaks, those nagging injuries, and when you train it properly, it will lead to that as well.
Yeah, I think I haven't put too much thought into it, but I think people using their body as one mechanism to do their task instead of isolating a muscle in their body to do a task. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that would probably help you in every aspect of life. I mean, and I'm not the guy to talk about it because I'm terrible at using my entire body to do stuff. Like I think my body is like a freaking action figure. Like
Yeah, you move in parts.
I move like hinged up like a He-Man figure, like a WWE figure or something like. But that's something I'm trying to figure out is how to like think of my body as one, like cohesion in every movement, not just working out, but like in everything. How do I make sure my body's working as a team? So I mean, that's what leads to, in my opinion, I mean that should lead to less injury. I mean, if you're using your body, I mean, when I think about that, I think about shooting in basketball. I mean, when I started using my entire body to shoot, I got better at shooting. It was
Yeah,
just
that burner came along with it.
yeah, like it was inherently easier. It was like instead of using my biceps to lift the ball up and my wrist to aim it, I'm really using my ankles and my knees for most of the thrust. And now when I get to the top of a jump shot, I just have to let it go because I've built up all that inertia through my body.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to everything we touched on with movement and these techniques and applying it to one another. This is the page I was referring to, Primal Movement, ran by Bam Lionheart. It has the education that you would be looking for. Here is the video I was just referring to about sleeping positions. These are different videos about certain stretches for decompressing, and it's really a lifestyle education library. So the information is out there. If you're looking for a specific place to
Yeah,
go, Primal Movement is the place. And this is not an endorsement because I'm affiliated with them. This is from learning and applying my knowledge to taking in what they teach and understanding the cohesion between it and how it makes sense from the standpoint of somebody educated in the exercise world. So if there's one place I recommend to go for this stuff, Primal Movement on YouTube would be the place.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out because I mean, I've realized how many degrees there are to health recently. Like just recently, I just thought health was like you're not feeling like you're about to have a heart attack. Like,
Yeah.
but
And the
like
important yeah.
that's crazy.
The important thing with these health degrees, the health industry, is we're actively rewriting it and what the new norm should be. The old norm is somebody did it and learned it before others and taught it their way. The new norm is that my way is not the only way. The new norm is that the body is a continuously changing thing. The environment around it is continuously changing, and we have to be adaptable. And I think that's the same in almost any field as the world evolves. But kinesiology, what we study now and actually watching people move, is trying to rewrite kinesiology. How we manage obesity, how we manage diabetes, and incorporating exercise as a prime or as a focal point in that is rewriting that form of care. So if there's a piece of advice I have for anybody, regardless of if you're learning in the exercise world or if you're learning in any other interest, is be adaptable and be willing to rewrite what was previously meant to be, and don't be afraid to take that step. I promise you won't be alone. There's somebody out there that is thinking it, that might not be as courageous as you to take that step, but because you did, are willing to learn and apply that and take it on and apply that knowledge to somebody else. So be willing to adapt in whatever your field is, and understand that with the world evolving, so are the fields that we learn. They're always ever changing.
I literally could not have said it better myself. That's yeah, that's that's the health Bible for everybody. I mean, there is the health Bible. There is no health Bible. They're always writing it. I mean, I think that's huge. Is not only doing the research and getting the education, but realizing that it's always changing, and then there's always new information coming out. And even people that aren't in the health field or in the professional fitness field, they can make a contribution to, you know, the global consensus of what it is to be healthy. I mean, because there's a new human born every day. There's a new bodies born every day. There's a new disease every week. So I mean, it's everybody contributing and putting their part in is helping everybody as a whole, and we all can help each other get healthy. I mean, that's the goal at the end of the day. We're all just trying to get healthy so we can live longer.
Yeah, and just apply the knowledge that you know. There's no need to feel like you have to conform to something you saw on Instagram or somebody else's way of living. If you don't truly believe in it, use the knowledge you know to garner belief in what you want. The primal movement or go-to movement practices, the exercise incorporation with obesity and diabetes, the use of techno gym and what their brand stands for. I fully believe in these things. If it's not something you fully believe in, don't pretend to be invested in it. Take your efforts and find something you do believe in, because you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but you're doing others that believe in you a disservice when you don't believe in what you're preaching. So even if you're wrong, believe in what you're preaching, and if it is wrong, be willing to learn from it. But if you're following in somebody else's footsteps that you don't believe, it's doing you a disservice, them a disservice, and the people that come after you a disservice.
Preach, brother, preach. I mean, and to end it off, I'ma just, even if you're telling complete cap, man, even if you're lying, believe it. Believe it like the Liver King, man.
Oh my
Believe
God.
it. Even if you're smacking down livers.
I got no belief in this guy, man.
But he believes it. At least I hope he does. Man. Yeah, I hope people can take everything you've taught today and implement it into their lives or tell somebody they know. And hopefully they can implement that in their lives.
Seek the knowledge. Don't be afraid to venture out. I know these things sound very cliche, but that's because there's such a vast majority of things out there for everybody. You know, the world has so many things to offer with technology now. Utilize it as a tool. Don't let it consume you. And, if you notice that you have some addictive traits with it, try and recognize those and take a step back. Don't let technology be your only way out. Be present in the real world. Use technology to apply your presence.
I mean, there you have it. I mean, have anything to add?
I just want to say thank you for having me, man. It's been 3 years in the making. Wow. I will be honest, I did sink for 3 years, but I was scuba diving. I'm back.
Get out the park. 2 hours and change.
Man, it was a pleasure, my brother.
And with
That was
that,
a
I'm
lot
gonna.
of fun.
I mean, yeah. I hope the people enjoyed it. I hope everybody could gain something from it. And I'm gonna smack this outro. You could tell it's my first time back. I'm gonna smack this outro, and we're out. Welcome to Don't Sink, and we'll catch y'all again if this outro would play.
We'll be here for a while.
We'll be here for a while.
Slowly sinking.
Slowly sinking, losing every viewer.
Yeah, the ship has a couple holes in it right now.
How do I do this? It's loading. It's just spinning and loading. So whenever it plays, it'll play, and that will be my sign out. And with that, we are signing out.
I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living.
Bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction.
Totally unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. Of Ukraine.
A new world order. A new world order can emerge. A new era.
No, don't. I got more info.
And Hillary are demons. Feeling peace in our time.
Still want to run for vote.
Peace in all time.